This program is brought to you by Emory University.
I was invited to come to Georgia State to develop a folklore curriculum in 1966, fresh out of graduate school. I hadn't finished my PhD yet. I had to go back to Penn for 2 summers to finish my coursework, do my comps, long distance, write my dissertation, which initially was going to be on a type of narrative folk song that started out as a popular song, sentimental ballads of the Victorian era, that had been picked up from mainly print and were now sung by people in the mountains and elsewhere as folk songs. And I was depending on University of Pennsylvania library and one of the libraries of my professors that I had physically helped to build the shelves of. And then I moved to Georgia and I didn't have those library resources, and so I had to find another dissertation topic. And in '68, I visited Lanier Meaders, a folk potter in North Georgia, the last old-fashioned traditional potter working in the state, in the hills of White County. And that contact just got me so excited about pottery research that I decided to do my dissertation on Georgia folk pottery, starting with Lanier as the visible tip of the iceberg, and then digging into historical resource, interviewing people who had been involved in the tradition but no longer were, and working with archaeologists to do some excavation of pottery sites. So that's how my interest developed in pottery. Just the meeting of this one man and his personality, his character, walking into his shop on a wet March day in '68, after the Smithsonian had come down and filmed him and his father at work. His father, Cheever Meaders, had died, and Lanier had decided to take over the pottery as a full-time business, built a new kiln recycled from the bricks of his dad's kiln, which had fallen in after the Smithsonian filming. I visited the shop just after he had unloaded the first firing of that new kiln, and he invited us into the shop, and I saw all of these face jugs staring at me. And they seemed to be alive. And it made such an impression on me. The ramshackle nature of his operation, it looked like the new kiln had been sitting there for 100 years and was ready to fall down. The workshop was a tar paper shack, basically. How could anybody create anything of substance and of beauty in this situation? But I've later discovered that folk potters all over the world, traditional potters, work in very similar situations.
Now, when you say that you walked into Mr. Meaders' shop and you saw the jugs on the shelves, that it hit you in some way, how were you prepared for that? Were you trained for that, or was it something beyond that?
Oh, it was a very personal thing. It had little to do with my training, I think. It was a gut reaction on a very human level. Had nothing to do really with academics. It was as if Lanier was expecting me. He greeted me. When I left the shop that day, he gave me 2 things. I mean, he didn't give his stuff to a lot of visitors, first-time visitors. He gave me the last little jug that his father had made before he died of a heart attack, little brown jug. And he gave me one of 2 what he called laser jugs that he had made. It was almost a kind of fatalistic situation. He knew that there was a chronicler out there, and I turned out to be that person, and somehow he knew that even before we spoke.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.